folks, welcome back to Ndaba Africa. This is Chris once again. Hey folks, welcome back to Ndaba Africa. This is Chris once more. Listen, hang on a second here. Pick a card, pick any card, okay? From the deck. Here you go. Wait, there we go. Ha-ha! The race card. I've played the race card. What? The race card? Well, yes. The race card has been played yet again. And ironically, you see South African unions claiming it's been pulled in the opposite direction. But what am I talking about? On the 9th of March, 2021, allegations of racism were leveled against new Eskom CEO Andre de Ruyter. De Ruyter, of course, famously was the chief executive officer of NAMPAC, a packaging company in South Africa, and was hired in January of 2021 to restore this failed parastatal to profitability and functionality. I mean, it can't even deliver electricity. On a good day, Eskom can only deliver approximately 60% of its installed capacity to its customers. That's beyond pathetic. But I digress. In January of 2020, they brought him in to rescue this company, which is a disastrous mess. At the time, I questioned his sanity. Why would you want to take over Eskom when you know clearly that your actions are going to be interfered with by a government intent on race-based policy, not on profitability, not on service delivery, not on competence and accomplishment, but on race. Race. And again, pull out your race card. Be part of the game. Right. Well, what's happened now? Eskom has decided to appoint an independent senior counsel. Why? Because suspended Eskom chief procurement officer, as if he's got a lot of credibility, Solly Tshitangano, leveled allegations against de Ruyter, claiming that he has been circumventing the procurement process to award contracts to so-called white suppliers over so-called black suppliers. Let me tell you what that means. That means that he's being accused of not awarding contracts to corrupt, inept, or non-existent broad-based black economic empowerment corporations or companies that do not deliver, and instead taking the best bid whatsoever. So by going after competence and accomplishment and fulfilling actual contracts, he's being accused of racism. The mere allegation itself is racist in nature. Do they not see the irony of that? On its part, Eskom had the following to say: the council will be empowered to interview any person that may be of assistance in the probe and consider any evidence, and will then report back to the board and make recommendations. Solly Tshitangano and his allegations notwithstanding, what's going to happen now? Wow. Can you do any job in South Africa and not be accused of racism? Well, if you're a minority, I say. Perhaps if you're a majority South African, you're not going to be accused of your actual racism. But let's talk about this. So this has already been attacked by a couple of unions. Their spokesperson for the National Union of Metal Workers, NUMSA, had a few things to say about this. Now, the spokesperson is Pakamile Lube Mahola, and she says that Eskom has a history of using these probes to cover up their favored executives' action. And she points out questions about Eskom's chief operating officer, Jan Oberholzer, who was accused of allegations of corruption, dishonesty, and abuse of power, and that last year they used a probe to cover up his misdeeds. Her words. She said that we want to make it clear as NUMSA that we don't have much faith in the actions that the board are currently taking. We have more faith in what Scopa is proposing and the inquiry that Scopa is proposing. We say this because the same board was very quick to whitewash Oberholzer in relation to the Stefanati investigations. We expect another whitewash process in what's being announced now. It's very clear that this board is determined to support a failed CEO. Whitewash. How about jumping to conclusions? What evidence do you have there, Miss Luby Mahola, to suggest that de Ruyter has done anything wrong? By the way, here's a little newsflash for you. It's not racism to award a contract to a company that's capable of fulfilling the contract and not award it to a corrupt, inept enterprise that's defrauded the state. That's not racism. That's good business. Wow. Now, she added that racism in Eskom has widespread in the past, talking about a purge of highly qualified black engineers. Really? A purge of high qualified black engineers? No evidence offered, no names, nothing brought in here whatsoever. Who are these highly qualified black engineers that Eskom has let go? We can, of course, show you a whole list of highly qualified South African, Afrikaans, white minority engineers and technicians from Eskom who no longer have employment there and have been forced to go abroad to Saudi Arabia, to France, to other countries like Japan to seek employment because they've been discriminated against based on their race. That's demonstrably provable. Would you like a few names? I can name a few of them personally. Yeah. So if there is, in fact, a purge of highly qualified black engineers, who replaced them? Not whites. Who was it? Coloreds, Indians? Please tell us, Miss Hulube Mohola. Tell us who these people were, because we're curious. Inquiring minds would like to know. Yes. She said there's been a concerted effort to get rid of black engineers who have skills and who understand how to run Eskom. Really? Really? Has anyone demonstrated any capacity to understand how to run Eskom in the past 27 years? Not really. It's gone from a national power utility that delivered all the electricity South Africa needed and then 40% of what the entire continent consumed at one point, to a sad, pathetic excuse for a power utility that can't even keep the lights on 24 hours a day. Never mind Six Sigma. They don't even approach the reverse of that, 666, not alone 99.9% operating capacity. No. South Africa's Eskom can barely keep 60% of installed capacity generated at a given time. Load shedding, rolling blackouts, keeping the grid from collapsing on a regular basis. Why? Because their incompetence, their award of contracts to fraudulent suppliers, their overrun cost on construction, and just flat out theft and fraud. It's a disaster. It's an absolute disaster. Now, that's NUMSA. Now, there's also NUM. That's the National Union of Mine Workers. And National Union Mine Workers had their spokesperson. That's Lifuwane Mumburu, said that they welcome action against De Ruyter. They welcome action. Okay, so Mr. De Ruyter has not been at Eskom for all these years when it failed. He's only been there for just over a year now. And you welcome action against him on unproven allegations. Well, what if I said you were a buffoon? Should we call for your dismissal? And then, everyone support it just because someone made an allegation against you? Do you see the idiocy of this? I sense an underlying tone of racism because Mr. De Ruyter is white. That's what I sense. In a company as big as Eskom, we don't want such allegations that the instability of Eskom must come to an end. We don't want anyone aligned to Eskom to be the one conducting the probe. So both the unions have called for outside investigation, not an internal probe. Well, I think calls for an outside investigation are premature. These are unsubstantiated allegations, and clearly, once again, as I pointed out, it appears that what's being done here is that someone's playing the race card, yet again. Yes. Now, Mamburu also said that there is more evidence of racism at Eskom because of the disparity in salary structures, where black and white employees doing the same job are paid differences, with blacks getting less. To quote him, the salary disparity at Eskom is another form of racism which should be addressed during the upcoming wage negotiations. Well, number one, a salary disparity on its own does not indicate racism. And if you think it does, you're not a very well-educated or clear-thinking or cogent individual. There are lots of reasons for salary disparity. But if in fact there is a disparity based on race, then let's take a look at it. I find it highly comical to hear from these people when the people running these organizations are largely majority black South Africans. Yet they continue to blame racism and apartheid for issues that have no bearing on what's going on whatsoever. If there in fact is a difference between equally qualified black and white employees, then let's see what it is. And let's investigate that. Don't make a claim without any substantiation, which is what's being done here, in an effort to disparage the reputation of Eskom and of De Ruyter, who hasn't even been at the company long enough to affect wage rates. Remember, we've been in COVID for a year, and there's been no money to pay for any pay increases or balance wage scales. Get real. Now, despite calls for De Ruyter to take a leave of absence while this matter is being probed, this is ridiculous. Eskom's spokesman, that's Sikonati Mantashansha, Mantashansha said the following. He said, the first thing of note is that there has never been, and there is still no grievance that has been lodged against Mr. De Ruyter in terms of Eskom's grievance process. The investigation the board has instituted is for an independent counsel to check whether there is any veracity and any basis to the allegations of racism that has now been made against Mr. De Ruyter with scope in Parliament. It is not a disciplinary process at this point. Yeah, well, there you go. It's an independent investigation. So both of these unions are wrong in their assertion about it being an internal cover-up. They're just simply wrong. And quite frankly, it's nauseating. It's nauseating. If I was Mr. Ruyter, I would file a countersuit against anybody claiming racism against me for simply doing the job he has been charged to do. To fix this broke-ass company. To end the patronage and corruption that has destroyed electricity delivery in South Africa. And to call the man racist because he won't give contracts to fraudulent companies that are owned by black South Africans is the height of lunacy. You people need an enema. Desperately. Desperately. And this endless race baiting and race card playing must end. South Africa is in desperate straits, and it is being run by lunatics. The lunatics are running the asylum. How can anybody take seriously people who continually play this race card? Black engineers have been purged. Well, then why have all the white Afrikaans-speaking engineers been forced out of work, made redundant, and forced to go abroad to seek employment, to feed their families? So does that mean all the engineers have been purged, white and black? What is going on here? Typical tired. So what is the race card? It's the tool of the intellectually weak and lazy when they cannot counter a logical argument or factual data. In this case, factual data is the issue here. So lay off of Mr. De Ruyter and get your facts straight. And grow up. Grow up. The revolution ended. It's over. You're in charge. Stop whining. Start taking responsibility for your actions. And stop being race merchants. It's very unbecoming. It's time to move on, folks. It is people like that who have undermined the concept of the Rainbow Nation. Best of luck to Mr. De Ruyter as he continues to try to salvage this fossil of a state-owned electricity giant that has been broken into 3 entities, which will simply compete with each other and make the process even worse. Rather than compete with each other, they should have broken the company up as a monopoly into regional entities and sold them off as privately held for-stock companies, retaining a share of that in a national sovereign wealth fund for the benefit of all South Africans. Say 40% of the company would remain in a national sovereign wealth fund to benefit all South Africans. The other 60% would be sold to shareholders publicly. That's what should have been done with Eskom, not this ANC patronage machine. Now you have 3 entities where you can stuff the board full of your cronies to pill for money. And that's what's happened with Eskom. Mr. De Ruyter has a Herculean, near impossible task. He must feel like Sisyphus, rolling that boulder all the way up the hill, only for it to roll all the way back down and start all over again each and every day. It is a task I do not envy of him. And the vile, unsubstantiated, race card, race baiting game is disgusting. Stop it, South Africa. Stop it. Well, folks, wherever you find me on YouTube, Rumble, BitChute, Subscribe, Star, Odyssey, wherever you watch my content, please give me a like, give me a flame, give me a rumble, whatever it takes. And feel free to become a subscriber, a follower on the appropriate platform. Thank you for your time, for your patronage. We do appreciate you here at Chris Wyatt. Let's fight idiotic, stupid racism wherever it rears its ugly head. And on a daily basis, it seems to be rearing its head in South Africa. And it's not the people that we all presume it might be. No, it's rarely the white minority that's involved in this race baiting. It's quite the opposite. It's the people who control the levers of power in South Africa who resort to it. And that is in itself quite shocking and disturbing.